Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Course. We are here in Calendar Coffee Roasters in Barna, but as announced today, soon to be
not for long
in Barna, because it is going to Uachtar,
Yeah.
which is very exciting.
Yeah.
It means that you guys are really established,
Mm-hmm.
and because you're so established, you have lots of knowledge. And because you've
I have soaked up
knowledge,
some of the knowledge.
so much knowledge. I personally want to know, and also I hope the viewers as well, about how you guys, Calendar Coffee Roasters, source your coffee beans, the different varieties. We touched on washed, honey, and natural. There are some others out there. Calendar, you normally go for washed.
Yep.
So how do you guys source it? How does it get from a farm somewhere in the world to here in Calendar?
In Barna for now.
In Barna for now, Uachtar soon.
Yeah.
And then to a cafe.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess basically what we start with is green buyers are kind of the liaison between farmers and us, roasters and producers and things like that. So you kind of develop a relationship with your green buyers. We have a couple of them. And over time they get an idea of what you like and kind of what might interest you, and then they send us samples. And usually those samples first come from origin, which it's coffees that have just been processed really, really fresh. And we get those and we do cuppings of those all the time because we're always looking for new coffees.
When you say origin, origin, where do you mean generally?
Well, we source from all over. We're kind of always there's a few places that we have yet to release a coffee from. I don't think Calendar's ever had any Asian coffees. We were cupping Mexican coffees today. There's places, we're always looking for something special. So we don't kind of focus on a certain origin to look for coffees from. But there's, as kind of with everybody in the industry, there are places in the world that have fantastic setup, whether that's kind of natural resources in terms of altitude, volcanic soil, all the things that make coffee trees happy. So we do always have Kenyans. I love Kenyans. Yeah. Ethiopians throughout the year, Guatemalans, Colombians, things like that. So yeah, we're always sampling a huge range, and then it's whatever coffees really stand out to us actually ends up the whole way through the process. But I guess the next step then, once we have sampled something that's been sent straight from origin, is we'll reserve that coffee, and then once it lands, so it'll go into coffee sacks and then into big containers, and then usually shipped on boats across to wherever the warehouses of the green buyers are. So one of ours is in Belgium, say. They'll land there, and that process takes a lot of time. So we'll then get another sample, which is referred to as a landed sample. So it's closer to what the coffee will taste like when we roast it for production. And obviously we're looking for coffee at its prime, which isn't necessarily straight off the tree because it typically needs to process and rest a little bit. Really fresh green coffee tastes green, for want of a better word, it tastes quite vegetal, a little bit too bright. The flavors tend to be what we describe as tight, which is just clenched, too kind of punchy. They're not flowy. The fruit kind of hasn't usually come out well enough in it. So once we get those landed samples, we taste them again, and sometimes they are aged, and sometimes the coffee just hasn't traveled well, or the natural product just ages really quickly. Different coffees age differently. For instance, Rwandan coffees are gorgeous, but they age really quickly, so you have to be very conscious of what stock you're taking and how you're getting through it. And there has been situations in the past, not since I've worked in Calendar, because Dan works really hard on stock management, but times where we'll have to cut a coffee short, so we'll keep green coffee and not sell it because it's just not tasting as good. But yeah, we'll taste them, and then if we're still happy with them, and then they taste what we hoped. Sometimes they get way better as well, which is always exciting.
Yeah.
Then you also kind of learn how to taste like early samples.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
is it difficult? Like, how do you
It's
predict? You know, when you taste it.
you can't predict it perfectly.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that you get an idea for, and it's kind of similar to how you end up developing a palate for freshly roasted coffee. Like,
Yeah.
obviously,
Wow.
you know that like coffee needs to rest out for it to be at its best, but like we have to develop a palate that like a coffee comes out of the roaster and 10 minutes later we're tasting it, and we know, okay, it's not perfect right now, but is it going to be perfect in 5, 6, 7 days time? So you have to predict it. And it's typically like those coffees taste a little bit, again, that kind of tight, where it tastes a bit short, a bit sharp, the acidity's way higher. There's like usually the aftertaste is just kind of gone. There's like a lot of things like that, and once you learn, you can kind of go, I think that's going to rest out, and and it's all estimation, like at the end of the day.
So I guess you reserve it and then you taste again.
Taste the landed sample, and then if it's not good, then we will send it back. Well, we won't send it. We're not going to send it back to Origin. Give it back to the farmers. We don't want it. No, thank you. Somebody, it will go to somebody. A nice home. We rehome the coffee. Personally, I go.
All coffee is not harmed. All coffee is not.
All coffee is beautiful in its own way. So then they arrive here, and then we start test roasting. So usually we'll roast a sample on our little test roaster, and then we'll start roasting full-size batches, because we want to create a profile that we can follow that's exactly the same. So our test batches and then our production, like the test batch that we decide is perfect, and our production batches are exactly the same, and we need like a proper reading and all the data and stuff like that. So we'll do a couple of test batches over a couple of weeks, test out a few different things, taste it, see how it rests out, lots of kind of variables like that, cupped against other coffees, cupped against other tests. And once we're really happy with it, then we can release it, put it up on the website, our customers can buy it, and then it goes to nice homes.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's some trek.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's hard to, like, you're cupping or you're tasting a sample early on, and then the length of time it takes from when you've initially taken that to when it gets to a cafe.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
How long do you think?
It depends on the origin. Coffees from, like, Ethiopia, say, tend to have a longer stretch of tasting really good. And need a little bit more rest, whereas, like, as I said, Rwandans tend to be quite short-lived. But yeah, somewhere in the kind of 6 to 9 months off the tree range is usually we try to aim for. We really focus on like seasonality. That's why we're called calendar. So that's like a big focus of ours, is to get it at that peak time, and it's a little bit different for every coffee. So part of our testing is also tasting to try to figure out, is this at its peak? And sometimes we have a coffee and we're like, it's good, and we could release it and it would be good, but is it going to be better in a couple of weeks' time? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And it's all like, it's all gambling. It is. It's all
really interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
The extra bit of flavour.
Just a
spice to the
that's
coffee.
Something to think about when you're up at 4 a.m.
Because in Canada they never sleep.
No. That's why I'm still here.
That's why the roasters keep them awake.
Exactly. We roast. It's like kind of a vicious circle. We roast coffee to stay awake, but we stay awake because of the coffee.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you love your job.
I do. I don't know about the guys. Maybe they hate them. I love my job.
Nice. No, it's really interesting because, like, from the sort of service side of things, we get people in the doors every day that ask us, "Where's your coffee from?"
Yeah.
And the general consensus is that coffee comes from one country, and it's there for the entire year.
Yeah.
And a roaster will pick a coffee that lasts an entire year.
Yeah.
And it stays that flavour. And like, I know Brazil has a great tasting coffee. Yeah. And then, they move to another one and they're like, no, Brazil is great. And, they think that they can predict the taste and the flavours from different countries. And so it's like, it's really interesting because nowadays the way that the coffee production has gone in different countries and the harvesting and the seasons, flavours have changed completely.
Yes.
And it can often be very hard to predict where coffee is from just by the taste. Which is nice because it's again an extra spice to it all.
Yep. The best thing about coffee is you never catch it. Like that's what I feel. Like you never like you always see it and you never like catch you never fully understand it. You never like get the perfect cup. But that's a really good point because it's really easy to think like roasted coffee's like really shelf stable. So these coffees here that were roasted today.
Handy they're right there.
Handy that they're right there. I put them there for this reference. I knew it was going to happen. It's not going to go off. It's not going to go rancid. You know, maybe it will in like 3 years. I don't know. But it is a fruit. It's a seed from a fruit. It is very much the same as any kind of other fresh produce. Where
that's
it has
really important. Like coffee is a fruit.
You need to start thinking like I think that's
people don't think about that.
Yeah, like I think
they see brown and they see like nutty.
And the word bean.
Yeah.
It's not a bean.
Yeah, exactly.
I do love the word bean. Yeah. So it's cute.
It's a fruit.
It's a fruit.
It has a season.
It has a season. And that's something that I've gotten to learn a bit more about is like, you know, we're in Kenyan season right now. Like the summer. I also kind of love this and I don't understand the process of this. I feel like the seasonality of coffee matches the season. Like, of course, Kenyans are summertime coffees.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I love that. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think a really important thing to educate people on because I want more people to have good coffee and people know that, you know, going in and being like, I want a Brazilian coffee. If they're asking for it at one time of the year, that might not necessarily be the coffee that they fell in love with 6 months previous. You know, and it's about like staying in tune with it and kind of honoring the amount of work that goes into growing coffee and like what an investment it is from the producers. It's a risky business to get into. It takes years to develop a crop that'll actually produce coffees that they can sell. And you know, we need to be respectful of how incredible it is and taste it when it's fantastic and it blows our minds.
Yes. That is a great way to end this episode. Very true though. You know, we have to stay true to it and honour it. And coffee is a fruit and it has a particular point where the flavour is. Yes, and you guys are doing that.
We're trying.
Well, thanks for educating us.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.